speakers are contained within the agenda. But Mikhail Pelfrey is the Director of Planning at KYTC. He's been in planning since 2011 and been the director since 2020. So I'm going to pass it over to him. Let us get started, and then we'll go from there. Mikhail, are you ready?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. The July quarterly statewide transportation planning meeting. Hope everybody's enjoying their summer so far. Just wanted to provide a few updates from my seat as director for the Division of Planning. I shared a letter. I think it was last week from dated July 1st to all the governors from U.S. Secretary Sean Duffy. With that, there was a 60-day request for state DOTs to coordinate with NPOs concerning safety data analysis and assessments to develop arterial segments, including intersections with the highest safety, operational, or compliance concerns. We're aware of that letter. As I said, we shared that letter with you all last week. We are putting some notes together, but we also expect to hear additional guidance from FHWA regarding this. So at that time, once we hear the additional outreach from FHWA, we will contact and get in coordination with all of our planning partners as we begin to put that together. I do want to thank some of the NPOs. I know it's the NPO cycle in terms of working on your tips and getting all the tips approved. I know I've seen several of those come through in the last few months. I saw Bob hop on real quick, but OKI and Kiowa I know are two I specifically have seen. I know the rest of y'all are probably doing some of that too as the cycles keep going. But thank you for your hard work on that. As we've reached into July, we've hit the new work program. So all of you all know that planning operates on a yearly budget. So our fiscal year 2026 work program has been approved by FHWA. That includes a budget of approximately $28 million of work that we'll be doing over this next year. That includes funds to the ads and the NPOs, as well as funds that are handled by the Division of Planning in my shop. I'll note with that it is a little bit of a bigger jump than it has been in previous years. Notably because we are doing a bunch of work in our traffic counting section. So for a big chunk of that, $3.6 million is going to go to traffic data collection and maintenance. So we are installing 18 new ATRs, which are the automatic traffic recorders that are across the state. That'll bump us up from about 100 to 120 or so. But this will allow us to bring our network up to current traffic monitoring guidelines in the TMG. And we're also going to repair and install 50 traffic loops or camera systems. So in terms of our typical budget on the year cycle, it's about $24 million. This is up to $28 million to be able to bring that up and to really improve our traffic counting program across the state. Everything else, the full document is available on the planning website under the SPR work program if anybody's interested in what we plan to accomplish this coming fiscal year. The ADA transition plan is a document that we submitted to FHWA several years back. In the highway plan now, we've got $4 million in each one of these two cycles, and we anticipate an additional $5 to $6 million in the upcoming out years of the highway plan to be able to address ADA deficiencies that were developed as part of this ADA transition plan. I do want to note Jared Jeffers, who is our sole bike ped coordinator now that Keith Lovin has finally stepped off into retirement. Jared Jeffers is going to be leading this effort as a project manager, and Nathan Ridgway, you all know, as a moderator for this session, is going to be assisting him as the deputy project manager and be able to kind of tackle a lot of these deficiencies we've got on our ADA facilities. So We have selected a couple of consultants to do the initial work on this. Michael Baker will be doing work in District 5 along Cane Run, along a 3-mile section of Kentucky 1934, which is Cane Run Road in Louisville. And there's about 50 or 60 intersections along that route that we're going to bring up, really addressing the curb ramps, addressing the ped push buttons, addressing the crosswalks, and so on and so forth, to be able to really bring these up as they were noted as deficiencies in our plan. EA Partners is going to be tackling sections in District 7 in Lexington along Winchester Road. And also we're looking at a more rural section in Boyle County in Junction City. So these are just the initial efforts as a part of this plan. This is something that we're kicking off, this, like I said, this cycle, but it's something that we hope to address as future funding we hope to get in future highway plans. And we fully anticipate that to be there, because this is something that we've got to address to meet FHWA USDOT requirements. The last thing I'll mention is a couple of conferences that are coming up. SASHTO, if anybody doesn't know what SASHTO is a Southern Association for State Highway and Transportation Officials. That one is going to be held in Lexington at the beginning of August, specifically August 3rd through 5th. SASHTO it's comprised of 14 southeastern states, and Kentucky hosts this about every 14 years. So it's a big conference. The last time it was in Kentucky was in Louisville in 2011. So this year it's in Lexington in 2025. If anybody's interested in going, I think you can still make reservations. You can still attend that conference. I think about 1,500 or so folks from across the Southeast attend that conference. It's not just state DOTs, it's consultants, it's everybody in the industry. So it is opportunity for you all to attend it, and if it being in the states closer than it's ever going to be. And also the partnering conference. The partnering conference, once again, will be held in Lexington this year. Once again, it's going to be held on the week of Labor Day, but this year we are moving it back from Tuesday to Thursday. It'll be held Wednesday to Friday this year, just to be able to give folks that work that conference an extra day to be able to prepare, and for them to be able to actually enjoy their Labor Day off. So materials will be registration and materials will be coming out for that, but I do want to note that once again will be happening the first week of September in Lexington once again. That's all I've got. I appreciate you all for joining us this morning, and hope you have a good day. Thanks, Nathan.
All right, let's keep this thing going. Thanks, Mikhail. We're going to transition to Assistant Director of Planning, Jason Blackburn. He's going to talk about shift and then go from there. Jason, you ready to go?
Yeah, we're coming along. I think that we should everything should meet the actual schedule. I know I think I told a few people that I was hoping, maybe we could be done a little bit early, but we've hit a few little snags, nothing major. So we fully intend to have all the data out to everyone by the 28th, which, like I said, I think it was the official schedule. That's what's on the internet and everything, and what we've done. So just as far as meetings go, just plan accordingly. And I've heard from some people that that's got some pretty tight meetings. Just be aware of that. We plan on giving here's a statewide project list, and then here are the regional local scores on the 28th, that Monday. Of course, after that, everybody has about 5 weeks, kind of tight. So that month of August, in order to get that boosting done. So hopefully everybody has planned accordingly, and going to be having those adding MPO meetings. If there's any issues, contact me, and we'll see if we can't get resolved. Just thanks for all the work so far. We've met our deadlines, and just want to stress that this year is different. It is tight. We do have a legal deadline, as I've said before, and so we've got to kind of keep these things moving. But overall, I think we're in good shape from a shift perspective. As always, especially for the new people, because I love hearing that new sets of eyes and ears, so to say. If it's your first time that's going through this process, and you're sitting there like, well, this is this is crazy. Well, why does this happen? Send me those questions, and send me, and of course the question is fine, and I'll try to answer it. But along with the question, if you do have a question, um, hopefully you come up with, well, it would be better to do this. Send that as well. That's we do try to continually improve our process, and we'll take all ideas. It does, just because you have an idea doesn't mean okay it's going to happen. Next time we're making changes, but we'll definitely look at it and see if it is a plausible type situation. That being said, Nathan, I'm in pretty good shape. I don't know if we're doing questions or anything. Like I said, just anybody can just email me directly if you want, or call me.
I think it'd be good if there are questions to go ahead and field. We got plenty of time. If you have questions for Jason regarding shifts, I know some of the questions I've heard is everything going to be on track? They're biting at the bit to get the scores, I think. So if anybody has questions now's time to speak up. Yeah, I need a cricket. I need a cricket sound for that when that happens again. We'll try to work on that.
A lot of our friends from UK are on here, and they're starting to get a little stressed too. Because I start pushing harder, I promise. But pretty confident, like I said, that we will meet the schedule. So not worried
And
at all about that.
that's July 28th, right? We getting scores out.
Yeah, that's the official deadline. The official time frame has always been that I would send everything, the statewide list along with the non-statewide project scores to use for boosting on the 28th.
Yeah.
So two Mondays from now.
Yep.
Doug,
All right.
you would unmuted. I don't know if you have a question or anything.
Sorry, brother. No, I didn't. I'd hit the wrong button.
All right. Well, that keeps us ahead of schedule. We'll go on and transition to our next speaker if there's no other questions. Reg, if you want to go and get your presentation pulled up, I'll start reading off introductions. And then we can kind of just hand it off to you, sir. You and Ed. So, Dr. Reginald Silverett is the chair of the Department of Civil Engineering in the Commonwealth and the Commonwealth Professor of Transportation Engineering at the University of Kentucky. He also serves as program manager for planning and education at the Kentucky Transportation Center. Dr. Silverett has over 25 years of experience in transportation education at the collegiate, postgraduate, continuing education levels, and he continually teaches graduate and undergraduate classes in highway safety, GIS, and airport design. He has successfully completed more than $10 million of sponsored research for U.S. DOT, state DOTs, local transportation agencies, foundations, and private transportation firms, with a focus on transportation data, highway safety, and railroad engineering. Dr. Silverett is a fellow member of the Association of Traffic Safety Information Systems Professionals and a member of both ASCE and the National Academy's Transportation Research Board, TRB. For TRB, is an at-large member of the Safety and Systems Users Group Executive Board and is Communications Coordinator and past chair of its Data and Information Systems section. Dr. Silverett earned both his bachelor's and master's degree in civil engineering from the University of Texas and a PhD in civil engineering from UC Berkeley. He's a registered professional engineer in Iowa and Kentucky. Speaking with him will be Ed Harding, who works at KYTC. His bio's a little short and sweet, but he works for the Office of Highway Safety and has been at KYTC since 2004, doing information technology and highway safety. With that being said, I'm going to pass it over to you guys, and we're all eager to hear your presentation.
Thank you, Nathan. First of all, just a couple corrections. Thanks for reading a very old bio of mine. It makes me feel younger. It's too long. I apologize for that. I'm no longer the chair of the civil engineering department, but I did have fun with that for about 8 years, and so I appreciate the kind introduction. Also, the length of the bios are inversely proportional to the contribution to be made in this area, and I really want to thank my friend Ed Harding, who's going to help me make the presentation this morning. Also like to call out a couple people that are on the call today, Dr. Ben Blanford and Mr. Tony Fields from KTC, who helped give us information for this presentation, and also we all work together on the development of the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. So I think we've got 20 or 30 minutes here, hopefully stay in that time frame, Nathan. I think I will start the presentation. We'll talk about the SHSP. Then I'll turn it over to Ed for some detailed analysis and some of the good work that he's doing with dashboards and in the Kentucky Office of Highway Safety, and then I'll wrap it up at the end. Okay, without any further ado, I think everybody on the call is probably really familiar with planning. It's the planning conference, but the safety planning is a little bit different animal. For example, our forecasting is a little bit different than the forecasting that we use for let's say travel demand modeling and traffic modeling. So we'll go into that just a little bit. I'm gonna see. Let's see here. It's just gonna change pages. There we go. All right. So we are required to have a highway safety plan for the state as a major component of the Highway Safety Improvement Program. As you know, this is Mike Vaughn's area, and there's tens of millions of dollars which are allocated every year to improve highway safety, and it all has to coordinate and be coordinated within the auspices of this plan. Is a comprehensive framework, and we focus on reduction of highway fatalities and serious injuries. So while the property damage only crashes are an important public visibility aspect and do cause traffic congestion, the focus here is on saving lives, getting people home for Thanksgiving dinner, and reducing life-changing injuries. And I think a lot of times we talk about the 40,000 or so fatalities we have nationally, but we don't talk about maybe 200,000 or 300,000 people whose lives are permanently changed and not for the better by highway crashes. So it's intended to guide investment decisions towards strategies and countermeasures, and that'll cover a few of those. And then an update is required every 5 years. And so we just completed the 5-year update. So this plan is for the time period from 2025 to 2029. KTC has been involved with this since the beginning of the required SHSPs. These are the cover pages from each of the last 5 plans up to today. We have a goal, an interim goal of a reduction of highway fatalities in Kentucky from 700 or 800, which is the number we have been kind of bouncing around the last few years, to an aggressive target of 500. That 500 is not our long-term goal. Our long-term goal is 0. But the 500 is fairly aggressive and motivates us to do something about it now. We also use the goal of 500 in the SHIFT program, which Jason just talked about, in terms of identifying the types of projects that can help us get to that 500 level. I'm going to skip the emphasis here, so we're going to talk a little bit about that later. So the big difference in this plan from previous plans is that we focus on the so-called safe system approach. Which is, serious injuries and fatalities are unacceptable. They should be avoidable. Humans are vulnerable and we make mistakes. So the responsibility's got to be shared by all the roadway users. Safety should be proactive and not just wait to see what the problems are to do something about it. And redundancy is key. So if you, for example, are in a vehicle involved in a crash, and maybe not you, but if someone say was distracted and on their cell phone, the seat belt is a secondary, sort of redundant feature in a car to assure that somebody can survive a crash. So we want safer people. Obviously, the distraction is a huge problem now. Safer vehicles, which we're making strides. The automotive industry has provided much safer vehicles with all kinds of safety features. Safer speeds. Speed is a terrible contributor to the severity of crashes and also the likelihood of crashes. Safer roads, which we're all about at the cabinet and the local agencies. And finally, post-crash care to improve EMS in terms of the response times and ability to get patients to the proper care to save their lives. So where are we now, in terms of crash fatalities? So we look at the last 25 years in Kentucky. We peaked at about 1,000 fatalities in 2005, and we were making pretty good progress down through the early to mid 2000s. And then we sort of seem to have plateaued and kind of leveled off. Last year was a good year relative to the year before. And it also is the lowest number of fatalities that we've had since about 2014, but we're still above our low point, which was 2013. And as you can see, we've got a ways to go before we can get to 500. Serious injuries also came down very dramatically in the early 2000s. This in part because of the vehicle technology that provided safety features, more survivability in crashes. But as you can see, that's also plateaued down at about 3,000 for the state. Kentucky's about a 1% of the national metrics in lots of different ways, and in serious injuries that represents about 3,000 in Kentucky. So how do we compare to neighboring states? And so we have picked all of our adjacent states and have the data here for you, and then also compared to the United States total. So the average fatality rate in Kentucky is unfortunately the second highest in our geographic region, and far above the national average of 1.26 per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. Now that said, this is a collection of primarily rural states, and rural fatality rates are higher than urban fatality rates. And so that 1.26 national figure is definitely affected by, say, New York, California, other large urbanized states where you have lower speeds in the urbanized areas and lower crash numbers of crashes on a per VMT basis. When looking at how things have changed over the last few years, and I guess we could kind of update this now, we just have the data here up to 2022, the increase in fatalities in Kentucky is thankfully very small compared to our regional states. So these are kind of telling two different stories, aren't they? They're like, we're higher than most of the other states, but we're also making more progress. And so that's kind of a good way to look at it. To slice and dice the Kentucky data to see where we're really having problems, what are the major types of crashes and causes of crashes or causal factors that contribute to all of this carnage. Roadway departure is the far highest component of the total number of crash fatalities in the state, with almost 60% of the fatalities involving a roadway departure. And as you can see, occupant protection comes next, then aggressive driving, and then we have a whole slew of important contributors down here at the bottom of the graph. You might quickly realize that when you add all these up, you get to be more than 100%, but that's because oftentimes there are multiple factors involved in a crash. For example, someone not wearing their seatbelt and having a roadway departure crash is a particularly lethal combination. So looking at each of these individual ones, we have selected historically over the last few SHSPs, we've selected the top 6 for focusing our efforts, and have increased that in the new SHSP to 9. And so the 6 that we had already were aggressive and distracted driving, impaired driving, which is drugs and alcohol, occupant protection or lack of occupant protection, roadway departure, and then a focus on vulnerable road users, bicycles, pedestrians, non-motorized modes. Our new emphasis areas include motorcyclists being broken out as used to be considered as part of the vulnerable road users, but there's a special case that really requires different strategies. Commercial motor vehicles, which, very safe drivers, but because of their size and mass are it's very dangerous if you do become involved in a motor vehicle, commercial motor vehicle crash. And then older drivers. We're going to look into some more detail about each one of these emphasis areas. So roadway departure, we have the same types of graphics here for you that we had for the statewide fatality and serious injury totals. And Tony has prepared a graph for us here that shows where we would need to be if we want to hit that goal of 500 by 2029. And you can see that the red line represents the 5-year moving average for fatals, and then where we need to be in order to get down to that 500 total. Now this would be sort of, you could think of it as the contribution that reduction of roadway departure would contribute toward getting to that goal of 500. And since you have about 60% of all the crashes or roadway departure, if we can get roadway departures down to 316, we will have achieved our goal in 5 years. And then on the right, you see the historical moving average of the serious injuries related to roadway departure. On the bottom of the screen, this is going to be very similar for the next set of slides, and so I won't go over each one of them in detail, but just to familiarize yourself with what you're going to be seeing. The bottom shows geographically, graphically, how Kentucky compares to neighboring states. And you can see that for roadway departure, our rate is amongst the highest in the region, only exceeded by West Virginia. If you go a little further away, you find some states, South Carolina and Arkansas, which are a bit higher than Kentucky. Still, the darker, the worse, and so we don't really want to be there. We happen to be 6th worst in the U.S., and again, we want to be 50th worst in the U.S. Occupant protection, those numbers of fatalities you can see here, about 200, a little bit more than 200 per year on buckle. We did find quite a nice decrease in unbelted and unrestrained fatalities last year, going down from, say, 278 to 211. And again, you can see the comparison to the other surrounding states, where Kentucky, unfortunately, is the highest of all the adjacent states in terms of, so we've got, not only do we get a lot of improvement, we have a lot of opportunity for further improvement if we can get those seatbelt usage rates up and proper child restraint. Aggressive driving, things like red light running, speeding, weaving in and out of traffic, that kind of thing is an issue. The fatalities involving those types of issues is actually going the wrong direction in the last 10 years, going up, as you see on the red line on the left. The serious injuries are coming down a little bit, but they have also plateaued. I think the graph, the map is interesting because it shows that Kentucky is, relatively safer and lower than even the U.S. average in this area. So the numbers kind of conflict, right? We've got increasing numbers, but we're lower than the other states. What that means is the other states are having even a worse problem than we are. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have room for improvement. It's just that all states seem to be struggling with increased aggressive driving, potentially, exacerbated by COVID and just, people not caring about other people. And that in general spills over from society and on the road, resulting in some pretty significant losses. Impaired driving, wow. So we're increasing in terms of impaired driving collisions, serious collisions. What's going to happen after we have this some experience with the legalized marijuana for medical usage? We don't know. That's something that we're really, paying a lot of attention to, and are frankly concerned about, especially because the trend was already increased. Now, just because marijuana got legalized doesn't mean it wasn't popular and used before that, and does have a contribution. So the law enforcement is working with better technology to detect drug usage levels in real time on this scene. So we should be getting some data shortly from that. Hopefully we can have some strategies to pull those numbers down. Distracted driving, fairly flat. Kentucky, Kentucky looks bad compared to the surrounding states, but we suspect that there may be something going on here having to do with the data, and that is that we might be doing a better job of noting that distracted driving was a contributor, and therefore we're making it look worse than other states. Lastly, vulnerable road users, and this again is a national trend that we don't like to see. This is the fastest increase in terms of the last 10 years of fatal and serious injury crashes. And so this is a #1 target area for us and all of the local agencies to address these pedestrian bicycle crashes. There's a couple of special rules, 3 special rules that are triggered if you have above a certain number of or percentage of your crashes having to do with vulnerable road users, older drivers and older pedestrians, and then high risk rural roads. And the top 2 we'll talk just a little bit about. You can see the trend in Kentucky for fatalities and serious injuries. The serious injuries is on the top, and that's all types of vulnerable road users and fatalities. And so it was pretty flat for a while and then increasing. One of the new things we're doing with the SHSP is to look not just at the state level, but look down at the more local levels. So a county analysis shows on the left where most of the vulnerable road user crashes occur. What if you take into consideration that those are also the most populous counties? You look on the right, you can see where the rates per 1,000 population are the highest, and they are in some surprising areas if you would think about it in terms of pedestrians and bicyclists. When we think about pedestrians and bicyclists in Louisville and Lexington, Northern Kentucky, but they're really all around the state, and we have to pay attention to those areas as well. How do we define a vulnerable road user? Well, we've got some new modes out there, right? We've got some scooters coming into play, and those obviously are very vulnerable people if they're on these things. Ed's daily update that some of you may be getting will show the number of those down on the bottom. Those are not included in the motorcycle and non-motorized numbers that you see on the top. Thankfully we haven't had any helmet related motor scooter fatalities, but very few people wear a helmet when they're on one of these e-scooters. And as you can see, we've had 6 fatalities already. Ed, I think it's right for this year is already right. We've had 6. Mentioned older drivers is a problem in terms of their fatality rates, and because of the aging of the population and the population pyramid, those are 2 very strong influences on increases in these that we are likely to see over the next few years. And so there's something that's naturally going to get worse if we don't do something about it. So we already have started with the vision testing, which should help in terms of identifying folks that really should not be driving anymore, and we need other countermeasures for that. Motorcyclists increasing slightly, and that's been pulled out because we're working with education campaigns and some training and some competitions between motorcycle clubs and all that to facilitate safer riding, and also more awareness of other people on the road of the vulnerability of motorcyclists. And it's just so easy to be driving down the road and not see the motorcyclist. There's a smaller footprint, and if you don't hear the Harley's motor as it goes by, you might change lanes at the wrong time, and then it's usually a serious injury or fatality when it happens. Commercial vehicles is also a new emphasis area, and you can see the data here. And lastly, intersections, while it's not an emphasis area per se, many of the emphasis areas, the crashes occur at the intersections, and as you can see, the numbers are increasing. And so, I don't know if automated enforcement is in the picture for that in the future. Some other strategies can mention that. I think this might be my last slide, Ed, if you're ready. This is just showing you how serious these crashes are in each one of these emphasis areas. And so when you have a very high percentage of serious crashes, K&A is the killed and serious injury, as compared to the percentage for all crashes, then that indicates a more severe crash when these things happen. Occupant protection really stands out. You got 25% of all K&As, but only 3% of all crashes involve lack of occupant protection. So that just really, you can see this as an opportunity slide. Okay, Ed, I would like to turn it over to you, and then I'll close up at the end. Thank you.
Well, like Reg brought up, we have each of these different emphasis areas that we're going through and trying to focus on. And so inside of our new plan, and if you're wondering what the heck does it look like, this is actually a screenshot from inside that plan. So this is the theme of the colors in there and so forth. But inside of each one of those, we've gone through and tried to address each of the 4 E's and coming up with different strategies that each of those different groups can go through and do. And you can see, I'm not going to read off the entire list here, but you can see, so this is an example of the education ones for going through and working specifically with motorcycles. So how we would go through and do each of these different pieces with them. Next slide. And like Reg brought up, with our complete streets going through and addressing everything here, we're going through and saying, what can we do on the emergency medical services side of things? Next slide. And then what can we do enforcement strategy wise? I know Reg touched on that impaired driving is one of those where we've seen a transition towards, and potentially we'll see even more of a transition towards having a whole lot more impairment not being alcohol based. So for instance, we're going through and rolling out oral fluid testing devices across the state. All of the KSP posts are actually equipped with those now. And we'll be rolling those out to other local agencies. But going through and trying to go through and find all these different strategies that we can use to go through and make progress towards our goals. Next slide. And then again, for most of what we're talking about here today for our engineering side, so what we can go through and do to try to address these safety concerns on the engineering side. So going through and saying, for each one of those different emphasis areas, what are the different things that we can do? Next slide. So again, like I said, this is an example. So we have an overview inside of the new plan going through and talking about that particular emphasis area. And we go through and talk about, what the problem is and defining what it is and trying to show how it geographically is spread across the state. And then looking at, well, for us to meet our interim goal of 500, what do we need to do for our reduction on this? The next slide. And Reg mentioned, so legislative goals wise, I am not sure how many of y'all are aware of it, but during the past legislative session, they did go through and pass for work zones. We have a quasi-automated enforcement now. So inside of work zones, we're going to have in some of those work zones devices that will go through and allow the officer to see and observe someone exceeding the speed limit. And it will actually transmit that information to the officer who is sitting downstream of the work zone. And so then they'll be able to go through and issue citations outside the work zone in a much safer condition rather than trying to do that inside of the work zones. But again, still trying to go through and see what we can do to go through and get helmet laws strengthened here, to work on hands-free, which Reg mentioned that distracted is going through and showing there. One of the other things that comes into play on that map is that a lot of the states surrounding us have hands-free laws, but we do not here. and going through and working on stricter enforcement and harsher penalties for things that are going on. So going through and putting in super speeder bills and things like that. So we have a bunch of different dashboards out there to go through and try to share the information with everybody here. So this is the two main web pages that the Office of Highway Safety operates. So we've got the one on the left is our public messaging site, and the one on the right is ours within the main KYTC site. And so the daily fatality summary is kind of our biggest consumer product out there right now, and that those two screenshots are showing you how to get to that daily fatality summary in each of those sites. Next slide. So we have two different versions of that daily fatality summary sitting out there. We've got kind of a high level, just if you want to know how are we doing right now. And I took screenshots on these on Monday, as you can see on there. So we've got high level, and then we've got more detail and more utility if you need it to go through and look more specifically at each of these different emphasis areas. If you want to hit the next slide there. So inside of that details, what we are going through here and doing is making it to where you can pick a specific geographic area to go through and look at. So you can go through and choose whether you want to look at fatalities or serious injuries or the combination of both. So that way you're addressing both the Ks and the As that we were going through and talking about. And then you can go through and pick whether or not you want to look at a specific county, at a KSP post, at a KYTC district. And inside here, you can drill into each of the different emphasis areas for the most part that we can provide from this data set. So as we talked about each, yes, sir.
I just wondered, since we have county, KSP post, and KYTC district for the audience today, would it be feasible to include MPO and add boundaries in terms of a selection set? It seems like it might be useful to people doing their own safety planning within their region to have that. Is that something that could be done?
Yes, at the county level. So the data sets that we're using here, we're going through and pulling from a county reporting based data set. So the Kentucky State Police has a group that goes through and gives us kind of a Cliff Notes version when a fatality occurs. And from that set, I could go through and do the counties for the MPOs, but not necessarily the specific pieces. So I'm just bringing that up for our partners in Clarksville and so forth.
Okay. So right now, could they go in and say pick 5 counties and have a total for those 5 counties?
Yes. So I will point out the control key is your best friend on these dashboards. So if you are inside of county, you can click on county, and if you hold down control, you can pick a grouping of counties. Okay. But I'm making a note here. So I can go through and add the area development districts onto there easily, and I should be able to go through and add MPO on there as well. And that way, and again, one thing I will point out is the banner across the top there, those filters, when you go through and apply those, stay across all of the different pages in this dashboard. So that way, if you go through and pick your MPO or you pick your county at the top there, it does permeate across all of the different filters that you're looking at in the dashboard here.
Super.
And if you want to hit the next slide there. So again, we do have the plan out there for everybody to be able to access, and we'll be sharing this presentation so you all can go through and check it out there. But if you go to those web pages that we have the screenshots of, so that if you go to highwaysafety.ky.gov, on the right side, it'll have safety plans listed there, and it'll have a link to that current plan. A lot of the other things that we wanted to bring up were there are a bunch of different solutions out there that we've got to try to help with communicating this and going through and figuring out what our progress is. So these are all different dashboards and tools and toolboxes that are sitting out there. And I know you all are probably familiar with quite a few of these, but if you're not, we just wanted to point out that they do exist out there. I know hopefully a lot of you all have probably used the Safer Road Solutions page, where it goes through and does a really good job of explaining each of the different innovations that we've had recently and going through and putting in, say, for instance, turbo roundabouts. So going through and explaining how that's going to function. And so we go through and link to different pieces like that. If we're going through and trying to say, well, how are we doing on a day-to-day basis, the daily fatality summary we're talking about there. If you're going through and working on trying to figure out what crash modification factor you want to go through and use. So what would be the type of action that you want to take in a certain spot? So making those decisions, there's a dashboard for going through and showing where those are. For each of the different emphasis areas, we're going to have a dashboard out there to go through and let you drill into the information for that specific piece. And then we've got extract interfaces out there. So we've got Hy-Vee right now, and then we have CDAT as well from our partners at KTC. And then we've got other places that you can go through and pull information. So going from Office of Highway Safety webpage, or going to the KYTC Data Mart, or if you can go into the track website. So each of these different tools are out there for you all to be able to see. But again, if you're looking for something maybe that's you're not finding here, then I think I'm going to hand it over to Reg, and he's going to talk about a service that KTC provides.
Thanks, Ed. So we realized that, just saying, hey, there's a lot of stuff on the internet is perhaps maybe overwhelming to folks. Sure, there's a lot of stuff on the internet. Duh, right? Well, if you want, and I really encourage you to use this service if you have any questions about highway safety or highway safety data. We call it the Kentucky Traffic Safety Data Service. KTSDS will get you right there if you Google it. And we help local agencies and law enforcement and others to formulate the question, first of all, that they really should be asking and working with them, and then directing them to resources. Sometimes we can even do some small analyses and maps for people. And we have this, it's for doing all these kinds of things from a planning perspective, benefit cost analysis, and grant applications, and then just really kind of hit us from any direction you want to. We will triage that request and get you to the appropriate person, or do the work under the auspices of the grant that we have from the Office of Highway Safety. There's also an online form. If you'd prefer, you can just pop some information in here. It'll go directly to our staff, and then we can try to help you. Okay, Nathan, just to wrap this up, what are the next steps with the strategic highway safety planning? It's a continuous process. It is not once every 5 years and forget about it. So Ben is doing some additional geographical analysis like he did for the vulnerable road users, but we're doing that for all the emphasis areas, and then we need to pass that information along to the local agencies that can work with the state to try to address the problems. We want to, in this round, better measure the effectiveness of our past expenditures so that we can do a better job of allocating resources. I've got a grad student right now that's finishing up an AI, what we're calling an AI policy tool, which is an artificial intelligence engine, which we're throwing in hundreds and hundreds of different variables related to, potentially related to highway safety performance, and letting this tool show us where, if we change these policies, what would the likely impact be? And lastly, you can help. We have formal task forces. We've got quarterly meetings of the impaired driving and occupant protection task forces, and then semi-annually we'll have a meeting of everybody, kind of a y'all come and that. But we also want to facilitate some informal conversations and brainstorming. We know these things happen, but we want to encourage more of it to happen. It seems like we work on projects and then we go to conferences and we make presentations, but we never just sit down and have coffee with our colleagues and just talk about these issues. That's where a lot of the innovation and new ideas can come from. And so if you'd like to participate in any of that, let Ed or myself know, or anybody on the team, and we'll get you involved. And then lastly, in your daily job, the safe system approach can be applied in many, many different areas. And not only, most of you are from the planning area, but this is an idea that Mike Vaughn had for us, and that is to go through any functional area and say, what are the strategies that each partner can perform to help support each of the safe system approach elements? For example, the division of maintenance can support safer people by doing this, this, and this, safer vehicles by this, this, and this. And so if you just use this as a template, you don't have to fill out the whole thing, but even if you fill out one, it's potentially going to help us to address the highway safety problem. So Nathan, thanks a lot for inviting us today. If we have time, I think Ed and I would be happy to try to answer any questions that you might have.
We do have time for questions. So folks that are out there, if you have questions for Ed or Reg, please speak up now.
I didn't have time to get that cricket wave.
Yeah,
file.
no, I need the cricket sound.
I'm going to use that on a future presentation. I'm going to embed
Question
it
in the chat.
We got a question in the
Reg-
chat.
Okay.
There is a question about legalized medical marijuana and whether or not we looked at that when we were looking at the impaired driving from the other states surrounding us.
Yeah, we haven't looked at that yet in our underneath this, and not to say that somebody else didn't when the legislature passed this law. I'm making an assumption, it may not be a good assumption, is that was one of the things that they perhaps looked at. Jason's got his, Mr. Swallow's got his hand raised. Perhaps he can help a little bit with that answer in that question.
Hey, Reg. Yeah, I was gonna say make my own comment, but yeah, as far as legalized medical, as that was starting to gain some steam over the last several years, we had reached out to other states, both on the medical side and on the recreational side, and talked to them about, basically what were your learned lessons and how. Knowing what you know now, would you have done anything differently as that was going through the process? And the biggest thing was the educational component, which I know that the Office of Highway Safety is working on to help people understand that if that's a prescribed medication to you, that's something that you don't need to be doing while you're driving or operating a vehicle, obviously. And so, I know those are things that the Highway Safety Office has been working on, and it's one of those things that. Oh, and I'm sorry, the specific question. Yes, almost every state that I've ever talked to that had any type of legalized marijuana sees an increase in impaired driving, crashes, serious injuries, and deaths. But that's, again, trying to prevent those types of things is what we're in the business of doing. And I just wanted to make a general comment, if I may, Reg, just real quick. I was telling Mikhail over on the side that I remember doing this presentation in 2020 when the previous strategic highway safety plan was completed for the STP meeting. And I'm so appreciative of all the hard work done, not only by the university, but also the Kentucky Office of Highway Safety, and what that partnership looks like. And while we're not where we want to be, we are continuing to make progress, and that's because of the efforts of a lot of the people on this call and a lot of other folks too. And so I would just double down on the comment that I made in the chat, and check this document out, see what types of activities you might be able to help with, and work with the Office of Highway Safety, because there's a lot of great work to do. And to be honest, there's no shortage of opportunity for people in the planning space to contribute to preventing serious injuries and deaths. And so I certainly look forward to continuing to work with y'all from my current role over here in the Office of Project Development, as well as with all of my divisions. And just I thank you for continuing to work together to make this progress, because we're not going to get to where we want to go unless we're all working together. So really appreciate you guys.
All right. Any other questions for Reg or Ed? Ed, I was able to get the Office of Highway Safety's page in the chat, but the other dashboard, if you could put that in the chat as well, then I couldn't get off your presentation, would be greatly appreciated.
Okay.
before we jump into Deanna, you can go on and get set up, but I'm gonna Terry sent me this news article, and I thought it was a great or news report, I'm sorry, from a news station in Bowling Green. I thought it was a great example of how we at KYTC will launch campaigns. I assume this is through the Office of Highway Safety, but it's got to be a direct result of the state strategic highway safety plan. So I want to play this. I hope it works out. If it doesn't, I will post it in the chat. So bear with me. I'm going to try to get this going. And let me know if you can hear this. Deanna, if you can hear it, let me know with the thumbs up. There we go. Can you all hear that? Can somebody let me know?
No, we can't hear it, and it's really choppy too. I wonder if it's
Yeah,
a band.
it's-
Okay.
Yeah, it's
I'll
really
just
glitchy.
post it in the chat. Apologize about that, but the article is sorry.
If you want, and you're in the office, I might be able to help you out, get the sound on there.
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, this is from the Office of Highway Safety campaign for Not So Fast Kentucky. It's just an example of how to get how they use the strategic highway safety plan emphasis area and release these campaigns to encourage people to slow down with extra enforcement and getting the word out. I'll post this in the chat so you guys can review that. And then with that being said, I'm gonna pass it over to Deanna. I apologize for not having that speaker situation set up. So Deanna, do you need an introduction? She's with the Highway Safety Improvement Program. I worked with her. She's surpassed me by all of my time. She's and I know she's really passionate about highway safety. So she's going to talk about safety performance targets.
And I was taught by the best, and that would be Nathan too. So anyways, thank you, everybody. I appreciate your the opportunity to present our HSIP safety performance targets this morning. I see we're running a little bit behind, so I'm going to make this fast. I will let you know. I'll probably breeze through some of the weedier slides. I will be available in the afternoon MPO meeting. So if you have questions or if you want to discuss any of the slides, please holler at me that time. But with that, I'm just going to plow on through this. So the first thing we always want to talk about is why. Why are we setting safety performance targets? And these are our Highway Safety Improvement Program safety targets. Bottom line is because our federal partners tell us to. I'm not going to read you any federal regulations or stuff, but the link is on the slide, and Nathan is going to post that on the STP webpage. So you're welcome to breeze through those. But really, the reason why we're setting safety targets is because it's going to improve our data. It's going to foster transparency and accountability, and it's going to allow us to track our progress, across the nation. And then, the bottom line is it's just the right thing to do because, as we talk about Vision Zero, we're a state that says no loss of life or serious injury is acceptable. We're just going to try to get to zero. And it really does encourage us to ask the questions of, this is our fatalities. Are we satisfied with this? Do we need to do more? So what are we measuring? So again, the link is there. Our federal partners require us to measure the number of fatalities, the rate of fatalities, the number of serious injuries, the rate of serious injuries, and then our pedestrian and bike fatalities and serious injuries. And while I was checking all my links this past week, I did run into this. So if our MPO partners want a 2-page fact sheet on our performance measures, I thought this was kind of cool. So, and that is a link up above there. You're always welcome to grab that and take a look at it. So one thing our federal regulations point out is that each state has their own methodology and program philosophy. We all understand that each safety program is unique, and that conclusions shouldn't be drawn based on these performance targets. And the reason why I point that out is because there's a number of states that have truly embraced the Vision Zero philosophy, and they've set their performance targets at 0. We are trying to, Kentucky, we want to set aggressive goals, but we want them to be achievable. So the next question is what happens if we don't achieve our safety performance targets? There's 2 things that queue up if we don't meet our targets. First of all, we lose our flexibility in being able to transfer some of our safety specific funding to other funding types that may not have as strict requirements. And the second thing is the HSIP must submit an implementation plan each year that we don't made our targets. But the first one, that doesn't burn our guts at all. Don't take our safety money and put it someplace else. So we're good with that, HSIP. The second that we have to put an implementation plan together, we do that anyway. So sure, we're good. We'll call it an implementation plan instead of an investment plan. We're good. But ultimately, like I said, the bottom line is it's the right thing to do. We know we want to improve safety. We do not want to protect flexibility. All right. So here's the meat of the stuff, or the weeds, whichever way you want to look at it. So how do we set our safety performance targets? And I'm going to apologize to our MPO partners. They've seen essentially, pardon me?
I think that was somebody coming in, it made an announcement.
Gotcha. Sorry about that. Like I said, our MPO partners have heard this same basic lecture for the last several years in a row. So yeah. All right. So our methodology in general is that we use crash data and vehicle miles traveled. We use the data since 2001, and we put basically a long-term linear trend line on that, a line of best fit. We use that line to project the annual fatality, serious injury, bike and ped crashes for the current year and the target year. We use 3 years of known values, and we use 2 years of projected values. And I know this is odd. This will be explained in further detail as we get along. Our data sources, we use KTC's analysis of traffic crash data in Kentucky. The links are there. We also use KYTC's crash database. And then we get the vehicle miles traveled from planning's webpage. All right, here's the fun part. So we've got this lovely spreadsheet. Again, this spreadsheet, we're not going to put it on planning's STP webpage, but I will email it to both Nathan and to Thomas Witt after this presentation. You all are, and I'll email it in Excel spreadsheet format so that you can take a look at the formulas. It's once you start poking at it, it's actually very straightforward. But the information in the green, that is our official data from KTC. The information in yellow, you'll notice it's 2024. That is our the last year that we have of full data. So we're in 2025 right now, but we're in July. So obviously we do not have full data. So we project out for 2025 and 2026. So in this, you can see the 2 years in the green and the yellow. Those are our 3 years of known data. The 2 years in kind of the salmon color, that's our 2 years of projected data. So let's look at the second part here. You'll see that we have this using the number of fatalities and the fatality rate. We have our projected 5-year average and we have our current 5-year average. Of those two right there, we have decided as a state that we are going to use that the lower number of those two. So this is getting a little weedy here, but basically it's saying we're going to use the lower of these two numbers that are circled in red. But I'm also going to point out, do you see that we have the one row there X'd out? So why we have that X'd out is, so HSIP and the Office of Highway Safety, we share 3 measures. NHTSA and FHWA require us to submit the same targets for our shared measures, those 3 outlined in red there. NHTSA also requires the Office of Highway Safety to submit a triennial highway safety plan every 3 years, which means the Office of Highway Safety is projecting 3 years forward on those 3 shared measures. NHTSA also requires Office of Highways measure the measures to be constant or improving. Therefore, our shared measures must be constant or improving, which we're doing anyways. That was back to our basic philosophy is we're going to choose the lower numbers. If you all recall, there was a notice of proposed rulemaking that was going to change HSIP's safety performance targets to also be every 3 years. But that was removed. I don't remember what the proper term was that our federal partners used on that. But so right now they have to do 3 years. We're still on an annual basis, but those 3 shared targets, we have to have the same numbers. So that's why the chart here up in the upper left-hand corner, that was from the 3 HSP from the Office of Highway Safety. And that's where that bottom row came from. So it says already set fatalities targets for 2026. That's where that number came from. So we're doing things a little differently, but it's in the same, it's the same thing. Let's see. So the 2 targets that HSIP has that are not shared with Office of Highway Safety, we're going to do those the normal way. All right, so I guess I needed a drum roll like Nathan needs his crickets. So our targets for 2026, the number of fatalities is 726. The rate of fatalities per 100 million VMT is 1.5. The number of serious injuries is 2,353. The rate of serious injuries per 100 million VMT is 5.610. And the number of non-motorized fatalities and non-motorized serious injuries is 321. Now, the next thing that most people want to know is how did we compare to last year? So there's our comparison. There's our 2025 targets, and those are our 2026 targets. All right, so the last question we always ask is, well, when do we do this? What is our schedule for target setting? This has been the same for the last number of years. From early to mid-May, the Division of Planning produces our preliminary VMT estimates for 2024. We also go back and make sure for the previous year that the preliminary VMT data that we used is accurate. We pull the official 2023 crash data from the KTC's crash analysis. The link was in there on the previous slide. We pull the 2024 crash data from our crash database, and then the team performs an initial look at the current safety trends. So late May and early June, we all meet, the Office of Highway Safety, the HSIP folks. We discuss the current safety trends, and we determine the recommended targets. And then mid to late June, the State Highway Engineer's Office reviews the targets and recommendations and approves the official safety targets. I got a chance to talk to Ryan Fisher last week, and he said that the current Office of Highway Safety's triennial highway safety plan goes through 2026. So my understanding is they will start setting the targets for their next triennial highway safety plan next year, so that we will, and again, we'll share our 3 shared measures. These are some additional resources if you would like to read some more detail about the safety performance targets. And I think that is my last slide. So if there are questions, I'd be happy to take those for right now.
Any questions
Hey,
out
Dan,
there?
I got a question. I know it sounded like with Ed's targets, he mentioned a target of 500 for fatalities. So I guess it sounds like, Deanna, your targets are quite a bit higher. So can you explain how those relate to each other and why Ed's is so much lower?
I think that was the fatality target that was set in the strategic highway safety plan. I'm not sure. Ed, do you want to, Ed or Reg, do you want to? I think those are different targets.
I maybe it's on my end, but I couldn't quite hear you, Deanna. Nathan,
Yeah,
did you hear?
Thomas said that the Strategic Highway Safety Plan has a target of 500 fatalities, and I think that was by 2024, if I remember reading the previous.
It's yeah, it was our goal for for the last highway strategic plan. It's also our goal for this highway strategic safety plan. So you can think of it as 2029 goal for the to meet 500. But I am not. I don't know why or if it's an issue or a problem that the shorter range goals in 3HSP and also in your office are not as aggressive, I guess. But I've heard that explained to me before, but I can't quite remember. Is anybody else on the call can chime in on that?
Yeah, this is Chris Ugo in Lexington. So this is something that the MPOs have kind of pointed out in the past and actually kind of complained about, is that these targets here are partly based on hard data from the past. So what the actual number of fatalities for 3 years, and then I think the 4th year is what last year's target was. And the only number that actually moves around at all is the 5th year. And so if you had bad years in the past, it almost doesn't matter what your target is for that 5th year. It's still going to be not as aggressive as you would like it to be.
So does that mean that the targets that Ed was talking about, the 500, that's like an actual annual number as opposed to an average?
I think that may be more of an aspirational goal of the cabinet, whereas what we're actually doing through this exercise here is partly prescribed to us by the federal government.
That is an excellent way to describe it, Chris. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions that we can talk about now? And like I said, if more questions come up, I will be available in this afternoon's MPO session, and I'd be happy to answer those. Or as always, you're welcome to email us deanna.mills@ky.gov. So
Yeah, thanks, Deanna. This is Reg again. Chris, I'd kind of like to follow up a little bit with you on the, consistency, or Thomas, both of you, on the consistency between the different plans and goals. So if we could do that later, that would be great.
Yeah, just reach out to me.
Yep, sounds good.
Thank you.
I see in the chat that Tanya's asked for the second to last page again with the other resources. Thank you for putting that in the chat, Tanya. I appreciate it. Nathan will be putting this presentation on the STP webpage. So all the links will be there, along with the targets. And again, I will be sending out the spreadsheet, the target setting spreadsheet, to both Nathan and Thomas. If you would like to have a copy of that, please holler out at either of them, and they will send that to you. Nathan, Tanya's asking for the link to the STP webpage if you want to drop that into the chat.
I have to wait till it's
After this.
I'll
yeah,
take care of it, Nathan. I
yeah.
got it.
All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns? No, we're going to stay on schedule. We'll have a little bit extra of a break since Deanna got us back on track. Thank you, Deanna, for that. And thank you for speaking today about safety performance targets. Come back at 10:40. Jeremy and Jonathan, you guys are on deck. You can go and get your presentations ready to go if you want. And we'll see everybody back at 10:40. Thanks. Righty, folks, it is 10:40. Hopefully were able to stretch your legs and check your emails. Take a little break. We're going to finish this next hour and 20 minutes out strong. Talking about some other statewide plans we have being developed and being worked on. The next up on the agenda is going to be our statewide rail plan that Jeremy Edgeworth out of the modal branch and Jonathan Albers from HDR have been working on to get done. Jonathan Albers is the HDR Transportation Mobility Section Manager for the Kentucky, Tennessee, and Arkansas area. Jonathan has 16 years of experience, has worked for HDR for 16 years. Jonathan began his career at HDR in Jacksonville, Florida, and he has lived and worked in Louisville, Kentucky for the past 6 years. At HDR, Jonathan serves as a section manager of a team of traffic engineers and transportation planners, and as a project manager for clients across Kentucky, Tennessee, and Arkansas. These clients include KYTC, Louisville Metro, TDOT, Tennessee Department of Transportation, and Arkansas Department of Transportation. With KYTC, John has been the project manager for 2 statewide plans, including the Truck Parking Assessment and Action Plan and the Kentucky Statewide Rail Plan update. I realized when I was looking at the agenda, I was like, Jeremy's bio was not on here, but luckily he has presented with us before, so I grabbed it real quick. And I was going to read off Jeremy's bio real quick before I turn it over to him. Jeremy Edgeworth serves as the Freight, Rail, and Waterways Coordinator for the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet in the Division of Planning. Mr. Edgeworth previously served as the Freight, Rail, and Waterways Coordinator from 2007 to 2013. He returned to this position in 2018 after working 5 years for the Kentucky General Assembly. Mr. Edgeworth has a Master of Urban Planning degree from the University of Louisville. All right, guys. Well, I'm done talking. I'm going to turn it over to you all and let me know if you have any issues.
Thanks, Nathan. John, if you want to go to the next slide. Perfect. So what we're going to do today is talk about the overview of the state rail plan, update you on kind of where we are, talk about some of the innovations that went into the rail plan, and then we'll finally leave some time at the end for Q&A. Next slide. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about the rail plan overview and update on its status. So what is the Kentucky State Rail Plan? This is a required document to meet the MAP 21 transportation goals and the FAST Act requirements. It presents our state priorities, outlines the role of rail within our transportation system, and it coordinates with other plans like our state freight plan and our long-range statewide transportation plan. Next slide. So the Federal Railroad Administration has a very prescribed format for state rail plans. They must be in the 6-chapter format shown, but states have broad flexibility within each chapter. For instance, our chapter 3 is a little bit smaller since we don't have a large passenger rail presence in Kentucky, but our rail plan effort included a much larger and extensive infrastructure assessment, so our chapter 2 is much larger. Next slide. So why did Kentucky decide to update our rail plan? Our last rail plan was done in 2015. Now, rail plans are required to be updated every 5 years, so we knew ours was out of date. But the penalty for not having a current rail plan is that you're not eligible for passenger rail funds. Since Kentucky doesn't receive passenger rail funds, it wasn't a big deal that our plan had really expired. But then we started hearing from some of our rail partners that as they submitted for rail grants, they would be asked if their proposed project was identified in our state rail plan, and it was not. Our expired rail plan did not have a list of critical rail projects or rail projects at all. So we didn't want to be a hindrance to our rail partners as they went after federal grants. We also heard from our rail partners that they did not want a basic rail plan because that provided them no benefit. They really wanted us to do a more in-depth assessment of the rail infrastructure that could be used for them to inform legislators about the condition of rail in Kentucky and the need for increased rail funding. So at the same time, We actually saw a presentation from Virginia DOT on their new rail plan that was not a standard PDF rail plan that you find on most websites. It utilized story map format and it made their rail plan much more interactive and user friendly. It allowed the user to customize their experience, and that was something that really interested us as we were developing our rail plan. So we took all this feedback and moved forward with updating Kentucky's rail plan. Next slide. So we began this effort back in June of 2023, and the rail plan was submitted to the FRA back in March for acceptance. The story map was made public in May. We are still awaiting final acceptance from the FRA, and we are finalizing the data dashboard, and the project will be complete. Next slide. So now I'll turn it over to Jonathan to discuss some of the innovations that went into our rail plan.
Thanks, Jeremy. As Jeremy mentioned, one of the things that KYTC heard from the rail stakeholders, and in particular some of the short line or Class 3 railroads, was that they were not able to provide any information on the infrastructure assessments that they needed because they did not even have the technical capability to go out and assess their own rail infrastructure. So as you saw on our schedule there, one of the early things that we did was we met with all of the railroads operating in Kentucky, short of Canadian National, who never responded. But when we met with the Class 3 railroads, we offered a infield assessment of their infrastructure, both the rail and structures, and 3 of those railroads took us up on that. TTI, we did their bridge and rail. Kentucky West Tennessee, we did their rail, and Tenkin, we did their rail. And TTI's line, it runs from Paris up to Maysville. Kentucky West Tennessee runs from the Tennessee state line through Murray, and Tenkin runs from the Tennessee state line up to Hickman. So that work was done back in December of 2023. And we had HDR staff go out and utilize high rail vehicles with the railroad staff and go out and do an assessment of their infrastructure. So for the rail assessments, we looked at information such as general track condition, rail weight, tie condition, rail bed condition, drainage conditions, and grade crossing conditions. And for structure assessments, we looked at general bridge stability, bridge deck condition, abutment condition, bridge tie condition, hydraulic and drainage condition, as all of these bridges that we looked at were just over hydraulic features. So this is an example map of what was prepared as part of the infrastructure assessment report. We covers the entire line, and we called out some areas where we would recommend retaining walls to be repaired, cross ties need to be updated, track washouts to be repaired. And in a summary for each of the railroad assessments that were done, we came up with recommendations and improvements that were recommended. And so for the rail itself, we recommended some upgraded rail weight, grade crossing upgrades, ballast upgrades, retaining wall replacements, tie replacements, turnout upgrades, which is where your spur tracks head off, repairing washouts, and upgrading the track to Class 2, which would allow for higher speed operations. And then for structures, pretty generally just recommended bridges we felt needed to be repaired. So as Jeremy mentioned, one of the things that came out of the discussions with stakeholders even before HDR was involved in the project was that it's been difficult for both KYTC and the railroads to explain to legislatures and other decision makers where rail infrastructure needs are in Kentucky, because there's not been one center storage point for all of the information and data on the rail infrastructure across the state. And so one of the things that was developed and is in the final stages is the rail data dashboard. And I'm actually, so this is the screenshot of it, and I'm going to jump out of the presentation real quick and actually show you all the live data dashboard. So this is the data dashboard. As mentioned in the schedule, you can actually access it through the story map in a few applications at the moment, but eventually this will be posted on the website with the story map and the rest of the rail plan for public use. And there will be a version for internal KYTC use, which will have a little more information available to it. So over here on the left, we have our filters. These are all of our geographical and political filters, which you can utilize to turn things on and off. We have railroad operator, FRA track classification, railroad status, which is active, inactive, we have counties, KYTC districts, Kentucky House districts, Kentucky Senate districts, congressional boundaries, MPO boundaries, ad boundaries, and then railroad crossings, whether they are active or passive. Over here to the right, we can see all of our data layers. As you zoom in a little further, you will get some more information that will pop up, such as railroad crossings, bridges, multimodal facilities, accidents that are from the FRA database. And so over here on the right are all of the things that you can turn on and off. Some of them are restricted by the zoom level. Like if we had all the railroad crossings displaying when you were zoomed out to state level, it would be pretty overwhelming. But you can go in and click on individual piece of information like this incident. Can tell you the year it occurred, that it was a derailment, the milepost that it occurred at, and then also the railroad that happened with. And same thing for bridges. Can give you the railroad owner and the bridge ID. And so as we utilize the filters, up here at the top, we have a summary of all of the data that is currently filtered. And so we have a total track mileage, 4,977 miles of track in Kentucky, 6,300 crossings, 892 bridges. And these are both bridges over the railroad and railroad bridges over other objects. So we can go to a KYTC district, select District 4, and it will highlight just the information in District 4, give you the total track mileage, the total number of crossings, the total bridges. It can give you the railroad owner by mile. This is a railroad type by mile, so main, spur, sidings, and then the trackage rights. So there's 10 miles of track in this area that are not owned by Paducah and Louisville, but that they have operating rights on. And same thing for the crossings. So when we get to the end, if anybody has any questions or would like a more in-depth demo of the dashboard, I am more than happy to do that. But we will jump over and talk a little bit about the actual story map itself. So this is live on the website now. As Jeremy mentioned, took a lot of inspiration from what was done for the Virginia story map. That was the first one that had actually been submitted to FRA as a story map. They actually did not develop a standard deliverable. Unfortunately, FRA did not have a totally positive experience with that story map deliverable. And when we approached them about submitting simply the story map, they said that that was not going to be approved any longer. So for Kentucky, we actually developed a standard PDF deliverable in parallel to the story map deliverable. But the story map deliverable is still a really great way to make the rail plan so much more useful, interactive, educational. You're not having to flip back and forth between sections and maps, or even try to get a lot of information out of very detailed sections of maps. And I'll show you kind of how that works. So you can click on any of these individual chapters. So the executive summary, and then the chapters 1 through 6, like Jeremy mentioned. So we'll start here on chapter 2. And so this is Kentucky's existing rail system. At the top, we continue to have quick links to all of the 6 chapters. And then once the data dashboard is ready, we'll also have a quick link to the data dashboard available at the top as well. As you zoom down, we have links to the different major headings in each individual chapter. And you can click on any of these and it'll take you immediately there. But it's a really great thing. And the interactive applications are one of the things that I think are really the most useful, and tried to get as many of these in here as we could, as many as made sense. So this is a section of the rail plan that covers the railroads that operate in Kentucky. And in the PDF deliverable, it's just simply a series of chapters or series of paragraphs that discuss each one of the railroads and their stats. And you can even see here, one of the things that's really great is each one of our reference links are actually live. So if you want to look at anything that we are referencing, you can click on it immediately and it opens a new window. But we start here. So this is showing us all of the Class 1 railroads. So these are our major mainline railroads. These are all the tracks owned by the Class 1 in Kentucky. And then we can also see all of the tracks owned by Class 1 surrounding Kentucky. And this is a live map. So we can zoom in, we can use the zoom tools, we can zoom all the way down into any area and look at where that Class 1 railroad is. But we continue to zoom, it will reset the map and it will talk about each one of the individual railroads. So here we have BNSF. And then once we switch over to Canadian National, it will change. It will show just the Canadian, highlight just Canadian National. And then we have a live link here. We can click on it. It takes us directly to the CN website. So you can zoom along, CSX, Norfolk Southern, Union Pacific, again, Union and BNSF have some trackage rights, but don't actually operate in Kentucky. And then we get to our Class 2 railroads. Paducah and Louisville is our only Class 2. And then we get to our Class 3s, go all the way down. We have Fredonia Valley. This is where I think it's really great because on our full statewide maps that are in the PDF, you're never going to be able to see these very small railroads, exactly where their track is, how they operate. But with the story map, it zooms right down in on them. Here's that Kentucky and West Tennessee that I was talking about that is up through Murray. LIRC, Louisville and Indiana with a little bit of track there in the Louisville area, Paducah in Illinois, and then the RJ Corman lines. One of the things that I think is neat is that RJ Corman has several different sections of track throughout Kentucky that they operate under different operating companies. And if you click on the individual lines, it highlights them so you can know which section you're looking at. There is Tenkin. So all throughout the story map, we have similar interactive maps to this. Also, we use this for, as Jeremy mentioned, one of the important things of the rail plan was bringing the active projects list up to date. And we talked extensively with the railroads and other stakeholders in the state about railroad projects that they are interested in, ones that are on their priority list, ones that they've applied for grants or planning to apply for grants. And so we have an interactive application that actually will zoom you around the state to show you where those actual projects are, and they're not just in a static list in a PDF. So again, it's really a very interactive, great. I could, the Virginia one, we were really inspired by how much, we've all opened and read planning documents, and you really have to make yourself continue to read them. But the story map, similar to when we use them on other projects, really encourages you to just continue to scroll, keeps you engaged, and I think the one for the rail plan does a good job of that. And similarly, when we get the Q&A at the end, I'm happy to come back in and take you to any section of this, but this is live on KYTC's website right now. One of the other unique things about how we did this, I think this is one of the first projects where since the story map and the data dashboard are going to be continuing to be developed, and there are going to be live documents that are going to be updated as data on the railroad and information changes. They were developed by HGR's GIS team, but they were actually built on KYTC's GIS server. So there was no painful transition or handover or transferring. It was simply always there, and it was just an issue of making it live, making the permissions public once everything was prepared. So we will hop back to the presentation. So rail plan, the public engagement and stakeholder engagement was one of the other areas that we felt like we used some innovative solutions. And I will say that TSW, Taylor Seifert Williams, was HDR's partner on this project, and they were a major part of what we did with stakeholder and public outreach. It led a lot of those efforts. So I'm presenting on it, but I got to give them the credit for helping make that successful. So the stakeholder outreach, we met with the railroad representatives from the 14 operating railroads in Kentucky. We met with 13 of them with their local management and their government affairs personnel, and tried to get from them what they would like to see in the rail plan, because they will be the major beneficiaries of making sure that it is up to date and accurate with their needs and goals. And then we also met with freight shippers. They are really the majority of the customers for those railroads, and we want to make sure that the rail plan is helping them meet their needs as important businesses, important economic engines in Kentucky. So we talked to freight shippers that work with both Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3 railroads, agricultural, manufacturing, warehousing providers, and met with as many of them as we could get in contact with. And then we met back with the railroads stakeholders once chapters 1 and 2 were prepared, gave them a chance to review a draft and give us any comments on that. So takeaways from the stakeholder information was that they mentioned that it would be really helpful if Kentucky offered financial assistance to Class C railroads similar to what Tennessee and Ohio provide. And the legislative and legal setup in Kentucky is a little bit different, but that actually was something that came to fruition through House Bill 1. There were some grant programs both directly to the railroads and to freight companies through a couple of grant programs, which are now have been awarded and are underway. And I think probably going to be potentially another round of the freight grants coming out again soon. Key challenge that was noted from the shippers was a reduction in service frequency and reliability from the Class 1 railroads. So, anything that the state could do to help with the reliability of Class 1 railroads, or perhaps give them access to more railroads. And then shippers want to increase their rail shipping, but are oftentimes limited either by their infrastructure or by rail service availability. So in addition to talking to the stakeholders, we also talked to the public. Early in the project, we held 3 public open houses. We selected one in West Kentucky, one in East Kentucky, and one in Central Kentucky, or more middle part of the state. And these were selected based upon the existing passenger rail service locations and proposed passenger rail service locations. So, Amtrak currently serves Fulton and Ashland, and then Louisville had at that point been proposed as a part of the Kentucky Cardinal returning. So we held on 3 back-to-back nights in March 2024, held these meetings, and we advertised them through mailings, the newspaper ads, a press release, and social media. Had pretty good attendance, 70 plus, but also got a lot of media attention that I think helped to get the word out about the public survey, which was also run in parallel. It was available online in both English and Spanish. It was open from February through May of 2024. It was advertised similar to the public meetings, but a lot of the interviews and TV and news coverage that was given to the public meetings focused on trying to get folks to go out and respond to the public survey, and we got a very strong response. See there, 2,800 responses in total, and was certainly stronger than we anticipated, and we have some lessons learned about the types of surveys that you should put out there when you get that many responses. We had a lot of free response questions And I didn't know there were so many different ways to spell Cincinnati, but we certainly learned that in trying to comb through the data of those 2,800 responses. And the details of the survey are in the rail plan document, but these are a couple of the example questions and responses that we had. So we asked, what other destinations within Kentucky would you like to be able to access via passenger rail? So this followed up questions about the existing Amtrak service. And so you can see here that Lexington, Louisville, Frankfort, Bowling Green were our top answers. A lot of interest in service to those areas. We asked, what other destinations outside of Kentucky would you like to be able to access via passenger rail? So here you can see Chicago, Nashville, Cincinnati, St. Louis, Atlanta, strong popularity. Indianapolis, Washington, D.C., following pretty closely behind. Takeaways from the public survey. The largest factor of why Kentucky residents are not utilizing existing train routes is that the train does not service the destinations that they require. Overall, that public said that they would like improvements to the locations and the overall comfort of the facilities of where we have passenger rail, as well as the schedule of the existing lines. Today, the Cardinal, which serves the Eastern Kentucky, only has service 3 days a week. And so we'd really like to, perhaps be more utilized if we had daily service. And then the most important things that they saw for utilization of passenger rail was cost, schedule, and reliability. So another thing that TSW helped us develop was the public website. It was launched in summer of 2024. Overall, we've had 11,000 views, 6,000 visitors, and we posted a draft version of the rail plan before it was submitted to FRA. When that was done, we sent out notice. We had a place on the website for members of the public to sign up for a mailing list to get updates, and we provided an update on the public meetings, an update on the draft plan. And when we posted the draft plan, we had more than 600 downloads of the draft plan. And following that posting of the draft plan, we held a virtual public meeting back in January earlier this year. The in-person public meetings were successful, but because this was a statewide plan, a little limiting to only be able to have it in person in 3 different places around the state. So we wanted to give everyone across the state a better chance to attend and give their input. And so we had 2 sessions, one midday and one in the evening. We had an opportunity, we gave an overview of the rail plan, and then we gave them an opportunity to ask questions. We did not answer any of those questions live, but we did do a Q&A session with questions that had been submitted previously through the project website. And then we took any of the questions that were asked during this session, and we posted the answers to the Q&A on the project website in the weeks following the meeting. And similarly, advertised this through newspaper ads, press release, social media posts, and overall 44 total attendance. So a little lower than the in-person public meeting, but had a lot of good interest and good Q&A sessions. So that covers the majority of the presentation. I think we've got about 10 minutes, or no, I guess we're really right at time. So we've got a couple minutes to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Yes, it's David Gambrill with Bluegrass Ad. I would
Yes, sir.
love to have you or somebody speak to my RTC on November the 10th. I very much want to bring the railroad perspective into transportation. I live in southern Lincoln County. When I was a newspaper editor, I had to write stories about people killed by trains, and I really like somehow to include, some sort of program of my RTC on safety, including infrastructure or whatever. I remember I put a picture of a train coming through what's called the Cut in Kings Mountain on the Norfolk Southern. And they featured it on their calendar, and there were Actually, I did a ride along and wrote a story about it. I was just amazed at how many folks would try to play chicken with the train, and in a um, in a game with a terrain, a car is going to lose 100 out of 100 times, and so
Yeah,
I don't know.
please reach out to Nathan. I think Nathan has my email address, and we'll see what we can get set up.
All right, appreciate it.
Other questions, comments, concerns? All right. Well, it's 11:10. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Jeremy and Jonathan, for presenting. I think it was excellent. I will touch base with you, Jonathan, about getting you in touch with David. Again, appreciate your efforts for KYTC. All right. Switching over, we're going to move on. And my boss, Steve DeWitt, the branch manager for the SPAC branch, is going to talk about our update to the KYTC public involvement plan. You there, Steve?
Thanks. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great. I did not prepare a presentation for y'all. We're actually is a little bit less along than I thought it was going to be when we put this on the agenda. Still kind of working through getting notice to proceed on this. So in general, the states are required under a couple of various CFRs to have a documented public involvement process throughout the life of the project. We call this the public involvement plan. And since our last public involvement plan update was in 2020, which was a pretty small update just to add in some virtual things to the previous update, which was 15 or 16, somewhere in there, we decided that it would be a good idea to do a bottom-up revamp of the public involvement plan, knowing so many things have changed. And to also, alongside of this, we're going to take the opportunity to update some things that a lot of people use on a day-to-day basis to kind of help them do their jobs and help them interface with the public more effectively, and to get the best feedback at each step of the process that we can. I'm sorry for starting with a boring-looking RFP, but it helps me remember what we actually put in the scope when we put this out for a consultant. This was before the administration changed, so some of these all these executive orders no longer are in force. But the important thing was kind of, it's kind of two forks here. We have the public involvement plan itself, which we want to be a relatable document that's short and concise and can be used by anyone basically to help figure out our process, but then also to have supplemental materials for a lot of audiences, the public, our MPOs, our ads, the legislature, that can be handouts to explain various topics like how the highway plan works, how what the project development life cycle is, what their role in all of this is. And then we also want to help out like the districts, and I'll show an example of this, when they do public involvement at various stages, what do they need? Like some checklists, some templates, things like that. So we went through Eric Pelfrey's consultant selection process and selected the Parsons team, which was PM'd by Mindy Peterson, who a lot of people have worked with before. She's helping out a lot with various public involvement efforts and is currently working a lot on I-69. And I wanted to just point out a couple of things from their project approach as part of the selection. We want the public involvement plan to tell the story of transportation, how it happens in Kentucky. And what the timeline is for that, how long it might take, what the roadmap is, and just kind of help it be a toolbox, a stop for people to make. Let me see if there's anything else in here that was I really wanted to talk about. We're also going to be looking at other states and things that they've done effectively well, and I'll show that here in a little bit as I kind of walk through these PDFs. You can see here some examples of those that toolbox we were talking about, and various checklists to help out our folks at the districts and their central office partners with making sure that everything anything that they might need can be in this toolbox. Now, I mentioned some graphics. Some of you may have seen this. We dug this up. This is a graphic that's still being used that might need a little bit of a refresh for how a project happens, kind of where it goes. And confusingly, it's sometimes seems backwards, but it's at least the way that cars go around a racetrack, even though it's backwards from how you actually read it. And so this is one graphic in particular that we were thinking would be very, very good to refresh and update. You may have seen this one, which has gotten a little bit of a refresh just with, swapping out pictures. But that kind of shows the steps of project development. Some districts have already, on their own, put together a public meeting guide for themselves. This is from District 5, and I think what we're thinking is something very similar to this for different types of meetings at different places, and so. There's just a lot of things in here. Make sure what you do for advertisements, examples of advertisements, examples of social media graphics. That's another thing we want to be able to do, have social media graphics, social media templates of things to say, variable message board examples, things of that nature. So a lot of what we're doing is some of it is rip off and duplicate from what others have been successful with. One of those states, and a guy I know pretty well from from North Carolina, they've gone through and created 2 guides. One's a resident's guide to transportation, and one is an elected official's guide to transportation. And so the resident's guide kind of tells you about how transportation in North Carolina works. We're thinking for us, this will be a more condensed document. North Carolina is a little bit unique in that every public road is a DOT-owned facility, where that's not quite the case for us. So we have a little bit of work to do explaining the different who owns different roads. But it talks about the project process. It talks about what decisions get made. It talks about public transportation. It talks about which agencies manage which plans, which is, I know, very difficult for folks to explain. And then, some other ways to get involved, what you can do. Their elected officials guide, very similar, but goes into a little bit more detail with things that are legislatively driven, and what their role is as a legislator or an elected official. Again, Kentucky is going to be different because of the active role our legislature takes in developing the highway or in enacting the highway plan, and also kind of how our collaborative process works with the judges, how shift works, things of that nature, and of course, kind of just contact info. We also are going to be looking at the website and kind of revamping that a little bit as best we can, kind of side by side with a different tool. MetroQuest got purchased by a company out of Australia. We had been using them for a little bit, but we are going to be transitioning to a product called Public Input, which will also be kind of wrapped up in this. But as an example, this is Ohio's public involvement kind of page where you just see like, this is where you can go for projects that are open for public comment. Here's the toolbox. Here are the requirements. Here's the STIP. Here's statewide planning, all together in one place. And then there was also this very long document from Federal Highways about getting involved in transportation decision making, that there's some stuff that we can pull out of. I know that's kind of a lot. It's not so much the plan. It is kind of this process, and also having some updates to some things that might be a little bit outdated, a little bit in need of a refresh and retooling. But ultimately, we're trying to make this a usable document for everyone, no matter if you work for the cabinet, if you are one of our customers, one of our planning partners, a member of the public. All of those folks will have something to look for, to gain from this document. So I'll bundle these PDFs all together and send them to Nathan. They can go up on the website with everything else. But go ahead and stop sharing that. See if anyone has any questions there. That was kind of an overview. It's been a little bit harder to get notice to proceed. We've kind of kept adding things, and then there's an opportunity for us to help out with former director of planning, now Assistant State Highway Engineer for Innovative Finance, Amanda Spencer. That position I call the toll czar. But there's some public involvement needs that they have that we're kind of trying to slide into this document, and get that scoped in there as well. Schedule wise, I'm hoping this has to be done before we do another long range plan update, which is probably a couple years down the road. So I would love to have this, at least the federally required part, not the toolbox and not the checklists and things like that, to have be able to adopt this plan next summer. That might be a little bit optimistic now. It might be closer to the fall or winter. There are some regulations on public comment and responses to that might slow that down a little bit. But that's at least what we're thinking now. Any questions? Anything you'd like to see in this plan? Anything that we could do to help make your job a little bit more successful in interacting with the public or local officials? I know that getting them up to speed is a challenge when we get new legislators in, especially as part of SHIFT. So I'm really hopeful we'll have some great tools available for that. Anything there, feel free to email me or email Nathan if you think of anything. I just kind of send Mindy some things that we'd like to cover. One recent one was explaining how the noise wall process works. For example, that's kind of a very deliberate process, and even though that sometimes that process is, people aren't familiar with that process, may try to do things that wouldn't lead to good outcomes. So if there's any topics like that, just let me know. I'll keep forwarding them on.
We need crickets. We need cricket sounds on virtual meetings. Can you hear me?
Yep, got you.
Okay. David Surratt gave you a clap.
I'll take it. Thank you, David.
No questions. Tanya's got a question.
Yes, ma'am. You're muted.
Hold on. I'm
there you go.
Trying to hit the buttons, just can't hit them fast enough, apparently. But anyway, thank you so much for sharing that information. Where are you in terms of the next step? You got another public outreach coming soon, or when's that going to happen next?
I anticipate, so we're not even under contract yet. So we're pretty early on in the process. Yeah. So I expect we would have a draft. The only thing I set in stone was kind of the review for public comment in like in April, even though that's probably going to get pushed. Let me see if I can find in the scope, and if not, I will follow up with you how we're doing. So what we scoped was to draft and share some questionnaires online to solicit input on the initial PIP, doing boosted social media, all of our email list, Gov delivery, a lot of the same things that we're doing for the rural consultation survey. We've also scoped some regional public meetings to gather feedback. I'm not sure if that will be initial or if that will be as part of the 45-day, that the draft has to be out there and circulating. Some social media content, newsletters that can go out through Gov Delivery, and then kind of taking all that feedback in and then delivering the final plan and then sending that out as well. We've scoped a lot of that. I might have to put more into it, but once we actually get going and get under contract, we'll have a kickoff meeting with the big project team, and which I'm definitely inviting you to, and we can discuss that, what really needs to go into that public involvement, the plan for the public involvement plan update.
Okay. No, that sounds good. I think in one of the prior plans there was a whole document in and of itself that really addresses the public outreach efforts that are
Right.
associated with that. So yeah, I'm just kind of wanting to get a kind of idea there. So you mentioned April. You think that might be when you're really officially coming out with anything, or you're just still not
I think
sure?
so, but we'll see once we actually
Okay.
get it under contract.
Okay.
We'll
Absolutely.
probably not have the same amount of swag that you and Jeff did for the previous ones. I'm still using all those chip clips, by the way.
I would definitely leverage that. Those things come in handy, and there's other things you can do. I think the bookmarks, you can still something you can do that are kind of very cost-effective way, and they still kind of fall in the category of something you can address and be
Yeah.
covered, if you will, just because of the way the nature of what they are. So, things like that you kind of think in that term. But anyway, yep. Thank you for sharing that information. I appreciate it and look forward to it.
You're welcome.
David said he wants pop sockets as a giveaway.
I didn't know those were still a thing.
I guess they are.
They're probably cheap then.
Yeah.
No, I think
All right.
we're interested in being the most effective we can be with this process.
Sounds good. I thought you did well without not having a PowerPoint. You did a good job.
And I can fake things really well.
Well, I'm going to jump into my presentation because it's always appropriate to say the best for last. Here I am down here in the District 7 dungeon today. I'm going to share my screen. Let me see. I got to put it in presentation mode. Again, forgive me for my lack of technology, or just maybe my, oh goodness. All right, let me see if I can find Teams. All right. Let's see, share screen. There we go. All right. So kind of the theme for today has been, our overarching statewide planning documents. And my role here at the cabinet, since I've been in planning for about a year and a half now, is working with our area development district transportation planners and meeting the criteria for statewide planning. And so I wanted to touch on that a little bit, and it kind of segues into our current rural consultation survey. But before we get started with that, I want to play a game. And I've had this developed for a little bit. If you can take your iPhone out, I'm assuming everybody has an iPhone, or most everybody. You can use your camera, and then there'll be a little pop-up that comes up. You can access Microsoft Form, and you can gather. We can start playing the game, and the game is to basically go through the acronym soup of planning and see if you can figure out what some of these acronyms are. Has everybody been able to access that or no? Oh, I see some responses. In the don't go use don't use Google. We've had one response. Is that there's only one person listening at all?
I'm typing my
The
responses in right now.
the names are long. I can't type that fast with
Yeah.
with my
Okay.
thumbs.
My job.
I'm
I know
typing
who
too.
that
Getting them.
is. Maybe. I'm gonna quit sharing because I assume everybody's in the. I'm gonna pull up the. Everybody
Nathan,
kind of.
we use
I
those acronyms because they're shorter. It takes a long time for us to type those in.
know. So everybody's pretty much knows what shift is. You know, shift is a big component of statewide planning. Strategic highway investment formula for tomorrow. I assume my job is Jason's answer, but it could also maybe be Reg. Was that you, Jason, that answered that? Nope. All right, my job. All right. Let's see, figure out who that is. Correct answer is John Voltier. It's a strategic highway investment formula for tomorrow. Daniel Holker. Okay, excellent. I'm sorry, Daniel, I forgot. But yes, Daniel is a major component to shift. All right, switching over to the long range statewide. Oh, sorry. The LRSTPs, the long range statewide transportation plan. You guys also have pretty much nailed that. The Louisville River statewide transportation problem. I like that answer. 27 responses. I do. If you guys kind of like this stuff, this is just a very basic thing I come up with. Long range thingy. I like that answer that as well. I've talked about getting the what was that, Steve? What was the program we were going to get or application to do the games? I forget what it was called. Ridgeway. Oh, I like the answer there. And without an E. So excellent. Do you remember Minty?
I'm trying to remember. Yeah, the Menti is what we've used before.
Remember.
There's a free version of it but it's only limited to like 50 people. So we could pull some pennies together and do one like that.
Where it's more a competition. So.
Yeah.
I mean, at least break up the presentations.
There's also there's one other one. I'll try and remember it. I'll circle back with you.
I did it at the Tismo training, and I thought that's pretty cool. So.
Yeah, it had like the square and the triangle and the it was like multicolored.
Yeah.
I'll talk to Zach and we'll figure out what that was.
All right, the last one, the STIP, Statewide Transportation Improvement Program, State Transportation Improvement Plan. So nobody knew. SPAC-Man, I like that. Again, these are all these acronyms. Actually, these are probably pretty simple. These are all fairly pretty simple, but some of them can get very. Some of the acronyms like protect. That particular acronym was very robust. Didn't bust that out today. I wanted to keep them statewide planning related. So hopefully you guys had fun with that. At least it breaks up some of the day as we finish up. I thought I'd just roll that out. I'm going to now jump into my presentation. This one. All right. So I'm like Deanna. I kind of always want to start with why or why do we do this, or what are we doing? And it starts with the history of statewide planning, and when researching this for my presentation, because I've only been in planning for a year and a half, I had to look back at some of this legislation that was occurring while I was in grade school to see what really how these things came about. And from the best I can tell, Ice-T in 1991 is kind of the birth of statewide planning, where the federal government they pivoted from extensive amount of investment in the interstate system to a focus on multimodal priorities. So they put more responsibility on the hands of state and local governments and metropolitan planning organizations. And IC also broadened the role of planners in transportation, encouraged more interested parties to participate in transportation decisions, brought goods movement and intermodal projects more prominently into consideration for funding, and reinforced the need for state transportation departments to move from a strict highway orientation to a multimodal perspective in statewide planning. Best I can tell, the STIP requirement was created with this legislation, and in our annual work program documentation, this is kind of the when our work program started as well, when we developed a formal public involvement process, which kind of Steve alluded to. It was in 1996. So, as a result of Ice-T, really statewide planning, jumped and became a thing, or became more prominent. With the T21, they were more specific about local non-metropolitan official outreach. So our ads became more involved as well. That's kind of what our ads do. They're there to reach out to our local non-metropolitan officials. That's kind of our bread and butter. So T21 is kind of the result of that, or why we local official outreach was more emphasized. Safety Lou, the statewide planning process is to be coordinated with metropolitan planning and statewide trade and economic development planning activities. The statewide plan should include measures to ensure the preservation and most efficient use of the existing system. I guess before this legislation passed, the STIP wasn't updated at least every 4 years. They changed that requirement to be updated at least every 4 years under that legislation. MAP 21, which is in 2012, a little bit more recent. I was at least starting working at the cabinet by then. That's when they kind of wanted to incorporate performance goals and measures and targets. Kind of talking about safety targets is kind of the beginning of that as well. The FAST Act is, I think, when we were started to be required to provide our performance goals and that sort of thing. And then with the IIJA, transportation planning really wasn't, in my opinion, really wasn't, change like the FAST Act made it change. But, it just kind of continued what we're doing, but also allowed more funding to be, with the grants and everything to be directly for, non-state officials to be direct recipients of grants, et cetera. And we have done that with our SS4A grants for sure, among others. As far as local official outreach and local, requirements for outreach in our program and the ad, what we do with the ads, it really falls under US 23 Chapter 1, Subchapter E, Part 450, Subpart B. A long way of saying, that's the law that we follow and the guidance we follow to do statewide planning. The purpose of statewide planning is to implement the provisions of US 23 USC 135, 23 USC 150, and 49 USC 5304 as amended, which require each state to carry out a continuing, cooperative, and comprehensive performance-based statewide multimodal transportation planning process, including the development of a long-range statewide transportation plan and STIP that facilitates the safe and efficient management, operation, and development of surface transportations that systems that will serve the mobility needs of people and freight. So a lot of what we talked about today follows under, this legislation and this code. We're talking about freight. We talked about public outreach. We did a little survey on, LRST and STIP, et cetera. Moving on, 450.206. I'm not going to get specific on that one, but there's 10 very specific factors that states will address while carrying out a continuing cooperative and comprehensive statewide transportation planning process. And there's also a discussion about a performance-based approach for the state and NPOs must establish. 450.208 and 450.210 is more what I'm interested in today. That's where it's getting specific to where we are with the ads. And I'll show you in the slide. 450.208, you highlighted, it's very deliberate that we will do outreach with and cooperate with local elected and appointed officials for transportations in non-metropolitan areas. But it says through RTPOs. We are not officially designated RTPOs in our state. We are ads, but we act very similarly instead of very similarly to RTPOs. Number 6, consider related planning activities being conducted outside of metropolitan planning areas and between states. We also do that as well. And then last but not least, 450.210, this is the requirement for the rural consultation survey. It states that we have to, every 5 years, review and solicit comments specifically from non-metropolitan local officials and other interested parties for a period of not less than 60 days. Our current rural consultation survey is what we use to do that solicitation and get a review for comments. I assume this is kind of requirement kicked in around the FAST Act, because I think our oldest one I found in our files was from like 2016, with the FAST Act being passed in 2015. I assume that's it, but maybe an old hat can correct me after the presentation. So the way I look at the rural consultation survey is are our outreach efforts effective? So here with the rural consultation, it was kind of set up very similar to the ones in the past, but I modified it using Microsoft Forms. There's about 30 questions, but not all questions are available depending on your choice. Questions 1 through 2 are kind of location based. We want to know what ad they belong to, what county they live in. The 3 through 6 is kind of title, occupation based. If you're elected official, they kind of get asked a little bit more. We want to be more deliberate in the local officials, but not limit it to just local officials. We want other folks to take the survey as well and provide input. Questions 7 through 14 are the statewide planning base. We're basically just asking if you're familiar with these documents, and we want to get the information. If folks aren't, then we need to do it. It's an indication we need to do a better effort with our outreach and our public involvement related to those documents. If they are, then we're going to kind of keep continuing doing what we do. They also ask specifically like what medium it's best to get your information. So like YouTube, Facebook pages, the ad page, etc. 15 through 21 and 22 through 26 are similar to the questions we've asked in the past about RTC, the regional transportation committees, and the ad planner is themselves. Question 27 is KYTC communication, and then 28 through 30 are demographic base. Demo this real quick. You click on the link. If you in the QR code, you can scan as well. but here's how we set up for folks to input what area development district they are. So very easily recognize your county, and then can click and select. Scrolling down, county reside, they can just type that in. And then this is where the branching really began. So if it's elected official, they'll get a couple more questions specific to being an elected official. So how many years have you been an elected official? I wanted to kind of get an idea of like, okay, if somebody just says they don't have a good, understanding of transportation documents, but they've been elected official for less than 1 year, then, that's kind of indication, well, maybe they just haven't been around long enough to really get a grasp of what those documents are. But if a lot of people have indicated they've been around for more than 10 years and they still don't understand what shift is, then we might need to do a better job of educating those folks about shift. Also wanted to separate the answers out by their specific title, whether they're county judge, executive, or mayor, or magistrate, commissioner, or some or another. Elected officials only got to ask this question about shift. Just kind of keep it a little bit simpler. It didn't make sense for like a resident that took it, or concerned citizen to take about shift. They would probably be very unfamiliar for most of their answers. And then this is the media questions that, how effective, what's the most effective way to learn about these various items. Let's go back up. If I select I'm a representative, then the questions kind of change. We want to know more like what your organization is, and then the shift questions removed. And now everybody gets the long range statewide transportation plan question, STIP, and highway plan. Starting with question 11 is specific to the RTC. If folks selected never, it skips the questions about the RTC. But if they said they've been to 1-2 meetings, then they get, how convenient are the meeting locations? Have you been given an opportunity to participate in the RTC? How responsive has been your questions or concerns? How satisfied? What improvements would you make? So very specific questions to the RTC. Same with the ad planner. If nobody ever interacted with the ad planner, they would get those questions skipped. But if they at least talked to them once, we want to know if the ad planner was eager to assist them, their knowledge base, did they present the information clear, and they provide any comments about the ad planner. This is the question where how well do you believe the Kentucky transportation community with you regarding decisions may relate to highway plan, and just to get overall. If it's not at all well, then we know we need to go back and improve our public involvement and do something different. And then last is the demographics, age, gender, and race. Postcards were mailed out specifically to county judge, executives, and mayors, and then other RTC members if the ad planner said that, were very active. For instance, there's a older lady and gentleman that go to the Bluegrass ad very actively and are very active, and they never hardly miss a meeting. So those folks, we would definitely wanted to provide those mailers to. But in addition to that, our ad planners have distributed out to others through their various sources and media. And then we have sent out, I've sent out, like every Monday, I've sent out, hey, this is how many county judge executives have participated, this is how many mayors, kind of where they're from, so they can get an idea of, okay, it looks like I'm missing 2 judges that need to take, out of all my ad counties, I'm missing 2 judges that need to take the survey. Let me reach out to them to see if they can take it for us. And then I've also sent emails specifically outreach to like the county CAECO, League of Cities, Magistrates Association, and et cetera. Public transit, various organizations statewide. Yesterday, I pulled this graphic. We've had 58 local officials take survey so far. Majority of residents have taken it. I'd like to get the numbers up. We're trying to be a little bit more proactive after the July 4th to get the judges and the mayors. The goal was to get all judges to take it. We'll see if that happens. And then I think we have about 300 and some mayors in the state, maybe more than that, that received a postcard, and we've only 37 have taken it. So I'd like to get the mayor's numbers up as well. And then 3 people that identify as others. So they were like a sheriff, I think was one. I think somebody said a state rep was another. The next steps are to the survey's open till October 1. After that, we're going to compile the data and analyze the responses, provide that to the ads and our KYTC planning staff. And then we'll get some responses back if we have to make some remedies or changes. And then we're going to submit a final report in February of 2026. And that is the end of my presentation. And we are open for questions. And I need crickets again. Oh, Tanya's got a question.
Hello, can you hear me? Hey,
Yes.
yeah, sorry, I don't mean to take up all the airspace here, but yeah, I wanted to inquire. I'm kind of like, when it comes to public outreach, it feels like you really try to do this wide net and you hope you get everybody, and sometimes there's a peak and then it's a lag and it kind of varies over time with the process. But one way that I've kind of noticed a way to make it more engaging or participatory, which I think if you might already be doing this, so forgive me if you are, but I know you mentioned you reached out to KCO, Kentucky League of Cities. I would use them. I would leverage them a little bit more as you're going through this process for public review. They do interact regularly with their constituents that they're working for, So if you can say, here's the update, here's the latest, we have this many mayors and we have this many fiscal court judges that are responding. Like, if you can get it, Mike, a competition kind of approach to things, I think that might help your numbers a little bit, because they making the statement that these counties are really responding more than those counties and things like that. People love competition and they just love to do the game thing, which I appreciate you sharing the game thing earlier. But just trying to make it like engaging a little bit, and that way I think it kind of can help spark interest, and knowing and talking to the KCO League of Cities are very helpful because of their connections, obviously, to the resources. But getting into do they do a flyer? How often do they reach out, and kind of giving them an update as they reach out, so that's something that they can put in their bulletins or however they're going about sharing information. It's just a suggestion. Anyway,
Yeah,
thought that might be helpful.
There's an internal competition going on in my brain with the ad planners to see who's first. They get some bonus points if they get done. So.
Well, we always kind of did that too when we did our public outreach. It worked quite well. So
yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah. Nice job.
Thanks. Any other questions, comments, concerns? I do see that Tom provided that I misspelled something. I will go and fix that. Appreciate you providing me that information. And I let Steve review it, so Steve should have caught that one.
Y'all know I can't spell without spell check.
All right. Well, if there's no further questions, I have finished us 6 minutes before 12 o'clock. And I guess reach out to Thomas and Jason for your afternoon meetings. And we appreciate everybody's time. And we will see you in October.
Thank y'all. Good job, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan.
Thanks, everybody.